Ethan Walker thought his quiet life beside Lake Arbor would remain undisturbed, until he discovered his mother, Grace Walker, literally chained to their front porch by Veronica Hale, president of the Silverbrook Estates HOA. What began as petty harassment spiraled into a full-blown conspiracy involving forged documents, midnight sabotage, and a clandestine network of HOA insiders. When FBI agents crashed the next HOA meeting, Ethan realized this wasn't a neighborhood spat but a campaign of intimidation and fraud. Here is the story of how one family turned the tables on their tormentors and rewrote the rules of community power. Early one Saturday morning, Ethan Walker loaded groceries, eggs, milk, vegetables, into his arms as he climbed the steps to his mother's bungalow. The sun hadn't fully risen, and mist curled around the pines that framed their Silverbrook Estates cul-de-sac. He paused at the porch railing when a metallic rattle froze him in place. Heavy chains clinked against wrought iron. "Mom?" he called, voice tight. There she was, Grace Walker, his 70-year-old mother, seated defiantly in her wheelchair, wrists bound to the railing by cold steel links. Tears glistened on her cheeks as she trembled, her service dog Max pacing anxiously nearby. Across the porch stood Veronica Hale, silver blonde hair pulled into a perfect chignon, designer sunglasses perched on her nose. In one manicured hand she held bolt cutters, in the other, a leather-bound clipboard. "Your mother violated Section 17.4 of our community code," Veronica announced, voice cool as dawn air. "HOA regulations forbid unsupervised wheelchair use on front porches longer than 10 minutes. I'm enforcing a $2,500 fine, for your mother's safety." Grace's arthritic hands shook. "I stepped outside to breathe fresh air," she whispered. "I've been indoors for days." Ethan slammed down his grocery bags. "This is assault. You can't chain my mother to her own porch." Veronica's smile sharpened. "According to the contract she signed when she moved here, the HOA reserves all enforcement authority. Read your homeowner's agreement." Ethan strode to her, yanked out his phone, scrolled the PDF. "Nowhere does it say you may physically restrain residents." Veronica tapped her phone serenely. "Section 12, Paragraph C, necessary measures to ensure compliance." "Necessary measures," Ethan spat. He lunged for the chain lock, tugged at it until the bolt cutters clicked open in Veronica's hand. Grace collapsed forward, sobbing. Ethan helped her into her chair. Red welts bloomed on her wrists. Veronica tucked her cutters away. "I'll submit proof of compliance, then the fine is suspended." She turned on her heel and glided down the steps as if she'd performed a civic duty. Inside, Ethan wrapped Grace in a blanket. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice cracking. She sipped hot tea, eyes on the ruined porch. "Heavens, Ethan, we came here to live in peace." He nodded, pulling out his phone. "First call, the county sheriff. You'll want to document this," the dispatcher advised. "But HOAs have broad authority. Some even include arbitration clauses." As Ethan took photos of Grace's injuries, he noticed a black sedan idling across the street. Tinted windows prevented a clear view inside, but he felt watched. When he looked again, it was gone. In the afternoon, Ethan combed neighbor forums online. Dozens of posts described petty Hoover-like enforcement. Faded mailbox flags, patio furniture shade violations, unapproved door wreaths. None mentioned physical restraints, until now. That evening, as crisp autumn air seeped through the open window, Grace confessed. "They started after you filed that complaint about Veronica's misuse of HOA funds." Ethan's pulse thundered. 3 weeks earlier, he'd quietly forwarded financial discrepancies. Hale's landscaping business billed the HOA for community beautification work performed at her own estate. Now the pieces fit. Chaining his mother was less about safety and more about silencing him. He settled at his computer, pulling up the original homeowner's agreement, scanning for ambiguous enforcement clauses. At the bottom of a buried page, he found it. Arbitration may include reasonable measures, as determined by the HOA board. Reasonable measures. A phrase broad enough to justify almost anything. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. If they thought they could bully his mother into submission, they didn't know the Walkers. This was no longer about a porch, it was about protecting the vulnerable from an overreaching power. The next morning, Ethan enlisted his friend Sarah Miller, a paralegal with a nose for detail, to help sift through HOA records. They met at Grace's dining room table, strewn with binders labeled HOA minutes, violation logs, and financial reports. "Look at this," Sarah said, tapping an invoice dated last month. "Community turf enhancement, Hale residence, $4,200. Ethan read aloud. "Services performed at 1442 Oakview Drive." That was Veronica's home address. "Cross-reference that with check stubs from the HOA account," Sarah continued. Within minutes, they found matching withdrawals. Veronica had billed the HOA for work on her own property, and had paid herself. Ethan rubbed his temples. "Embezzlement. That's a felony. But Veronica controls the board. She'll dismiss any internal complaints." Sarah flicked through meeting minutes. "Here, January. Board grants president unilateral enforcement authority to maintain community aesthetics. Signed, Veronica Hale." "How did she get that passed?" Ethan asked. "Look at the board roster," Sarah replied. 5 members. Hale, her husband Dale, her brother-in-law the sheriff's sergeant, the local bank president, and the Lions Club treasurer. It's a family business. That afternoon, they drove to the county clerk's office. At the records counter, Marta Thompson, retired archivist and longtime county employee, greeted them. "I recognize those names," she said. "They've woven themselves into every civic group." Marta retrieved past HOAs. 3 neighboring subdivisions had similar leadership patterns. In each case, the president's family held multiple board seats. "This is pattern fraud," Marta observed. "Do you have proof of chained restraints?" Sarah slid over Grace's wrist photos and the sheriff's report. Marta studied them, eyebrows raised. "Evidence of physical coercion, serious. If you compile affidavits from other targeted residents, you could present a solid case to the state attorney general." Ethan exhaled. "I'll do it." Back home, Ethan organized a community support group on social media, Silverbrook Residents for Fair Enforcement. Within hours, dozens of neighbors joined. Many posted stories of petty harassment, unauthorized mailbox flags, nighttime surveillance cars in their driveways, fines for grassblade variations. One post caught Ethan's eye. A video clip showing Veronica's son, Adam Hale, skulking around an elderly neighbor's driveway at 3 a.m., adjusting the garbage cans. When confronted, he mumbled something about aesthetic checks. That night, Sarah helped Ethan draft a demand letter to the HOA board, citing embezzlement, elder abuse, and property harassment. They attached documentation and offered to meet for mediation. They served it via certified mail. 3 days later, a reply arrived. "Your allegations are unfounded. All HOA actions are legal and binding. Pay outstanding fines or face foreclosure." Ethan felt the noose tighten. Foreclosure for a $2,500 fine plus legal fees? They weren't bluffing, but he'd unearthed something more potent, the Silverbrook dam files. Grace had retained copies of her dam control permits, granting her family sole authority to regulate lake flow, a right recorded in public archives and never revoked. If they tried to foreclose or seize the dam, he could trigger a contractual default and force a temporary injunction, effectively halting any resort development or enforcement action. However, that was escalation. He preferred to out them with evidence first. Late that evening, they installed a doorbell camera outside Grace's porch. While downloading footage, Ethan noticed the black sedan again, this time parked across the street with 2 board members. The camera picked up them snapping photos of Grace's wheelchair ramp. Then the sedan departed. "They're gathering dirt on your mother," Ethan said. "It's personal." Grace nodded. "They saw my military ID when I registered as a veteran homeowner. They know I served in civil rights investigations. So they targeted you," Ethan realized aloud. "They thought if they humiliated you enough, I'd shut up." He powered down the computer. Tomorrow, he would meet with an attorney specialized in HOA litigation, one referred by Sarah's firm pro bono. Then he would compile witness affidavits, file for an injunction, and alert the state attorney general's office. But first, he needed rest. As Grace dozed by the window, Ethan allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The oppressors had unwittingly revealed their own vulnerabilities. At dawn, Ethan drove to the County Bar Association's legal aid clinic. He met with attorney Lucas Nguyen, known for landmark consumer protection suits. Lucas listened to Ethan's summary, flipping through the binders of evidence. Chains on a disabled resident, elder abuse. Embezzlement of HOA funds. Harassment of a protected class. This is your trifecta, Lucas said. We can file a temporary restraining order halting HOA enforcement and any foreclosure actions. Ethan nodded. What about the dam permits? Lucas raised an eyebrow. If the Walker family still holds flow control rights, we could file a counter-suit claiming declaratory relief, asking the court to affirm your rights, which would override any HOA covenants on lake activities. That would freeze them instantly, Ethan realized. Instantly, Lucas confirmed. But the real power is the public record. We need to serve the Silverbrook Estates HOA board and get this in front of a judge before they can retaliate further. That afternoon, Ethan returned home to find neighbors gathered in his yard. Mrs. Patel from 2 doors down, her service dog at her side, retired teacher Mr. Johnson, young couple the Martins with their baby. All had stories of HOA overreach. Each signed a sworn statement affirming Grace's character and detailing their own harassment. By early evening, Lucas had drafted and filed in county court both the restraining order motion and the declaratory relief complaint. Within 2 hours, the court clerk emailed confirmation. Temporary restraining order granted. No further HOA enforcement or foreclosure on 22 Walker Lane pending hearing. Ethan sat on the porch as golden light dipped across the lake. Grace wheeled beside him, Max resting at her feet. You did it, she whispered, voice thick with emotion. He shook his head. We did it. They found the black sedan parked again, this time outside the HOA office. Ethan's phone rang. Lucas. They've filed an appeal and sent a cease and desist for the dam rights paperwork. You better serve them that as well. Ethan read the HOA's new lawyer letter aloud. Cease interference with lake operations or face contempt charges. He scrolled to his dam control files and tapped send to the clerk. Then he emailed the local TV station. Exclusive. Victoria's restraining order against HOA, but new escalation threatens to dam the lake. By nightfall, news crawls announced HOA restraining order, Silverbrook Lake under legal dispute. Neighbors who had once shuttered their curtains now peered out in solidarity. In the morning, the Silverbrook Estates Board convened. Minus Lucas and Ethan, inside their glass-walled meeting hall, hoping to rally support. But halfway through their pitch on community aesthetics, the local TV crew burst in. Cameras rolled as Ethan calmly presented the restraining order and dam control documents. Board President Veronica Hale's composure cracked. This is defamation, she cried, but no one watched her. The station broadcast live footage of her family's bank statements and the stolen HOA funds invoices in Lucas's hands. One neighbor stepped forward. You sold our home after you fined my mother $3,000 for a broken nail on her doorframe, she said into the mic. Others nodded, voices rising in unison. The board meeting dissolved into chaos. Ethan watched from the back, heart pounding. At last, the community had broken free from fear. Veronica Hale slumped in her seat, her family's empire unraveling live on air. 2 weeks later, the hearing on the declaratory relief and HOA injunction took place in Judge Marisol Bennett's courtroom. The gallery overflowed with Silverbrook residents, Grace and Ethan seated in the front row, clutching hands. Attorney Lucas Nguyen opened with the dam control rights. Original flow control easement recorded in 1931 remains unrevoked. Any HOA covenant conflicting with these superior rights is void. He presented certified deeds, county clerk affidavits, and a sworn statement from the Department of Water Resources. Veronica Hale's counsel argued procedural technicalities, but Judge Bennett cut her off. This court must uphold valid, unrevoked easements over private community covenants. She nodded to Ethan's folder of evidence. Your motions are granted. Silverbrook Estates HOA is enjoined from enforcing any provision conflicting with the Walker family's dam control rights or pursuing foreclosure. The courtroom erupted in subdued applause. Outside, neighbors cheered, cameras flashed, and Lucas hugged Ethan and Grace. That afternoon, a second hearing was set for criminal charges. County prosecutors indicted Veronica Hale and 2 accomplice board members on embezzlement, elder abuse, and conspiracy. Stephanie Rodriguez, FBI agent in charge of the local task force, arrived in court to testify, confirming the HOA's cross-state pattern of harassment and property flipping. As Agent Rodriguez detailed the federal investigation, Veronica's shoulders sagged. Her chrome-trimmed sunglasses lay on the counsel table, her image unraveling. Sentencing came 4 months later. Judge Bennett sentenced Veronica and her accomplices to prison terms ranging from 3 to 6 years, plus full restitution of misappropriated HOA funds. Their properties were seized and auctioned, the proceeds funneled into a HOA Abuse Victims Trust. On a sunlit Saturday 1 year later, Silverbrook Estates hosted the Unity on the Lake festival at the newly restored Walker Pavilion, named in honor of Grace's advocacy. Neighbors gathered with potluck dishes, children giggled by the water, and local musicians played on a floating stage. A commemorative plaque declared, "In grateful recognition of the courage of Grace and Ethan Walker, whose perseverance guaranteed the sanctity of home and community." Ethan stood beside his mother as she cut the ribbon. "This pavilion belongs to everyone," Grace announced. "Here, we celebrate unity, not uniformity." The crowd cheered. Old board members who once cowered under Hale's rule now lined up to offer their apologies. Mr. Johnson, tears in his eyes, handed Grace a bouquet. Mrs. Patel hugged her and whispered, "Thank you for giving us back our lives." That evening, as lanterns glowed on the walkways, Ethan and Grace strolled side by side along the lake. Max padded at their heels. The gentle lapping of water replaced the roar of bulldozers. "Mom," Ethan said, voice soft in the dusk, "you taught me how to fight injustice." Grace squeezed his hand. "And you taught me to trust the community." Under a sky ablaze with stars, Silverbrook Estates felt whole once more, built not on fear and secrecy, but on transparency, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds of neighborly trust.